You are not letting go of your old self. That already happened. The version of you that kept surviving instead of living has already stepped away, even if your mind still keeps setting a place for it at the table. You are letting go of your old version sounds like something that is happening right now, but what if the truth is more unsettling than that? What if the real reason you feel so disoriented is not because you are changing, but because you are finally noticing that the change already took place? I know how strange that feels. One day you react differently to something that used to consume you, and instead of feeling proud, you feel confused. You start wondering whether something inside you is broken, but maybe nothing broke. Maybe something simply stopped belonging to you long before you realized it. There is a quiet moment that almost nobody talks about. It happens before peace arrives, but after the old struggle has already lost its grip. It feels empty, almost unfinished. You find yourself looking at situations that once demanded your attention, and somehow they no longer pull you in the same way. Maybe you stop checking someone's social media every night without even deciding to stop. Maybe you notice that an argument you once would have defended with every ounce of energy suddenly feels too small to carry. Maybe you walk away from proving yourself, not because you gave up, but because the need dissolved without asking your permission. Those moments rarely feel victorious. They often feel unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things can make us doubt ourselves far more than painful things ever did. So let me ask you something that deserves more than a quick answer. What are you still doing for someone you already stopped being? Not what you want to become, not who you used to admire, the person you have already outgrown without noticing. Think carefully before answering. Are you still apologizing for growing in ways that make other people uncomfortable? Are you still explaining choices that no longer need defending? Are you still carrying habits that only exist because someone you no longer are once believed they were necessary? Deep inside, there is a scene that has never reached its ending. Something remains suspended, waiting for a moment that never came. You can feel it, even if you cannot name it yet. It is like standing in a doorway after everyone else has left, convinced there is still one more conversation that has to happen before you can finally close the door. Stay with me until the end, because I want to show you something that completely changed the way I understood these moments. The exhaustion you have been carrying may not come from fighting your past. It may come from resisting the reality that your past already released you. There is a profound difference between forcing yourself to let go and realizing there is nothing left to hold. Once you see that difference, many of the questions you have been asking yourself begin to dissolve on their own. And that unfinished scene inside you, the one that quietly keeps asking for your attention, will finally begin to reveal why it has been waiting for you all this time, and why accepting what has already ended is far less painful than pretending it still needs your permission. There is a strange kind of grief that comes when you miss a version of yourself that was not even kind to you. I know that sounds contradictory, but I have felt it. You can know a pattern was draining you and still feel pulled toward it because it gave you instructions. It told you when to speak, when to apologize, when to shrink, when to prove that you were still worthy of staying. And when those instructions stop feeling natural, you may not feel free right away. You may feel exposed. You may feel like you are standing in the middle of your own life without the old script in your hand. That is why you go back to behaviors you already understand are too costly. You check the profile again, not because you want the person back, but because the checking used to give shape to the emptiness. You explain yourself again, not because they asked with care, but because being misunderstood used to feel unbearable. You soften your boundary, not because it is wrong, but because the old version of you still believes peace must be purchased with self-abandonment. I once knew someone who sat in her parked car outside a grocery store with the engine still running, staring at one text message for almost 20 minutes. The message said, "You've been different lately." That was all. No accusation. No long paragraph, just one sentence with enough history behind it to press every old button in her body. Months earlier, she would have answered immediately. She would have typed something careful, warm, apologetic, and painfully strategic. She would have explained that she was not trying to hurt anyone. She would have reassured the other person that she was still good, still available, still easy to reach, still familiar enough to not be rejected. But that day, nothing came. Her thumb hovered above the keyboard, and the old performance would not start. She did not feel proud at first. She felt guilty. She felt almost rude. She wondered if silence meant she had become cold. But the truth was quieter than that. She was not punishing anyone. She was meeting a signal from inside herself that no longer allowed her to betray her own clarity, just to make someone else comfortable. This is the part that confuses people most. They think the old self is still present because the old impulse still appears, but an impulse is not an identity. A reflex is not a calling. A familiar fear is not proof that you belong to the same pattern. Your body may reach for the past because the past once taught it how to survive. If you learned that love could disappear without warning, you may still feel the urge to over-respond. If you learned that conflict meant abandonment, you may still try to fix tension before you even understand what happened. If you learned that being chosen required being useful, you may still feel guilty when you rest, decline, delay, or choose privacy. So when you stop reacting the way you used to, something inside you may panic and call that panic wisdom. It may say, "Be careful. Do not change too much. Do not make people uncomfortable. Do not lose control of the image they have of you." And because that voice sounds reasonable, you may call it maturity. You may say, "I am just being cautious." But sometimes caution is only fear dressed like responsibility. So before we break the belief, I want you to understand this with compassion. You are not weak because part of you still reaches backward. You are not fake because some old habits still know your address. You are not failing because the transition does not feel clean. The old version of you was not just a mistake. It was a shelter built during storms you may not have had language for. Of course, leaving it feels complicated. Of course, there is guilt. Of course, there is a strange tenderness toward the very self that kept you exhausted. But look at the evidence already in front of you. You do not argue with the same hunger anymore. You do not chase the same validation with the same desperation. You do not feel the same need to be understood by people who only knew how to love your smaller shape. Something has already shifted. The old structure is losing authority, and what you are feeling now is not the return of who you were. It is the echo of a room you have already walked out of. The belief that keeps you trapped is this: you think you still need to let go of who you were. But look closer. What if the release already happened, and the ache you feel is only the delay between the ending and your recognition of it? You keep treating yourself like you are standing at the beginning of a transformation, but your behavior is already telling the truth before your mind can accept it. You pause where you used to chase. You notice the message and do not obey the old urgency. You hear a comment that once would have made you defend your entire existence, and now something in you simply watches it pass. That is not emptiness. That is evidence. The old role is no longer running the room. The strange part is that freedom does not always arrive as joy. Sometimes it arrives as disorientation, because you no longer know how to perform the pain that once gave your life structure. Real wisdom is not standing forever at the doorway, asking whether the doorway is real. Real wisdom is recognizing the opening and stepping through before fear teaches you to call hesitation discernment, because fear can sound very mature when it wants to keep you familiar. It says, "Be careful." It says, "Do not move too fast." It says, "Maybe you are overreacting." It says, "Maybe the old way was safer." And maybe, at one time it was. Maybe the old version protected you from abandonment, judgment, humiliation, rejection, or loneliness. Maybe over-explaining kept people close. Maybe being agreeable kept the room calm. Maybe checking, fixing, pleasing, proving, and anticipating everyone's mood made you feel less exposed. But survival strategies become prisons when the danger has passed, and you keep living as if it is still standing in front of you. The hidden pattern is not that you cannot let go. The hidden pattern is that you are trying to say goodbye to something that has already left. You keep arranging the chairs for a farewell. You keep preparing the speech. You keep waiting for the old self to return so you can release it properly. But it is not coming back in the shape you remember. Your mind treats identity like survival, not decoration. That is why this feels so personal. If you were the dependable one, choosing yourself can feel like betrayal. If you were the one who always answered, silence can feel like cruelty. If you were the one who kept explaining, privacy can feel like guilt. If you were the one who carried every emotional shift in the room, peace can feel suspicious at first. This is why the old self echoes even after it is gone. The nervous system remembers the role, even when the soul no longer agrees to play it. So ask yourself, slowly, What do you defend today only because you defended it before? If you stopped defending it, what would remain that is actually true? And this loss you feel, is it the loss of who you were or the loss of how others used to see you? That last question matters because many people are not grieving their old self. They are grieving the certainty of being readable to people who knew how to manage the smaller version. They are grieving the comfort of being predictable. They are grieving the old map, even though that map led them back to the same rooms that kept them tired. Now the question returns with more weight. What are you still doing for someone you already stopped being? Are you still shrinking your answers so nobody notices your clarity? Are you still reaching for chaos because calmness feels unfamiliar? Are you still rehearsing explanations for people who only accepted you when you were easier to access? I know this can sting, but the sting is not here to shame you. It is here to separate truth from habit. Something opens when you stop trying to recover the shape that once helped you survive. You stop asking the past to validate your next step. You stop confusing the echo of an old room with a calling to return. And slowly, you realize the transition was never asking you to become someone brand new overnight. It was asking you to stop interrupting the person who had already begun to emerge. You do not have to force yourself into a new life all at once. Sometimes the first sign of real change is not a dramatic decision. It is a small, quiet refusal to keep negotiating with a pattern that used to feel bigger than you. You breathe before answering. You notice the pull without obeying it. You let someone misunderstand you without rushing to repair the image they have of you. And at first, that may not feel peaceful. It may feel unfamiliar, like walking through your own house after every piece of furniture has been moved. Nothing is attacking you, but your body still looks for the old shape of things. That is where you must be gentle with yourself, not in a way that avoids truth, but in a way that gives truth enough space to settle without turning healing into another performance. Because the new perspective is not, I must destroy who I was. That only creates another war inside you. The deeper perspective is, I can honor who protected me and still stop living as that version. There is a difference. Fear disguised as maturity keeps demanding more proof before you move. Wisdom notices the signal that has already repeated itself in your choices, your reactions, your pauses, your silence. Imagine holding an old coat that kept you warm through a brutal winter. You do not hate the coat. You do not call it useless. You do not pretend it never saved you. You simply realize it is too heavy for the season you are entering now. And if you keep wearing it, only because it once protected you, you will start mistaking heaviness for loyalty. You will start believing discomfort is devotion. You will keep sweating under something that no longer belongs to the weather of your life. The first turning point is when you stop needing your old reactions to prove that you still care. You can care without collapsing. You can feel something without turning it into an emergency. You can receive a message, hear the old alarm, and still choose not to build your whole day around it. The second turning point is when you stop apologizing for the evidence of your growth. Your calmness is not cruelty. Your distance is not arrogance. Your silence is not punishment. Sometimes silence is the first honest boundary your nervous system has ever been allowed to keep. And the third turning point is when you realize that the people who say, "You changed," are not always giving you a sentence. Sometimes they are simply reporting that the version they knew how to access is no longer available. Let that land. You are not obligated to become readable again just because someone is uncomfortable with your clarity. That is when the path begins to open. Not loudly, not perfectly, but clearly. You stop searching for the exact moment the old self disappeared because you start seeing proof everywhere. In the argument you did not enter, in the explanation you did not send, in the guilt you felt but did not obey, in the private choice nobody applauded, but something within you recognized as honest. This is how you begin to trust the transition. Step by step, signal by signal. You stop treating your evolution like a betrayal and you start understanding it as a return. Not to who you were before everything happened, but to the part of you that was never meant to survive by disappearing. And once you see that, the old version stops looking like a home you abandoned. It becomes a shelter you outgrew, a place to thank, not a place to live. You were never meant to drag your old self into every room your new awareness is trying to enter. At some point, the heaviest thing is not the past itself. It is the way you keep checking whether you are allowed to leave it behind. But permission will not come from the version of you that was built to survive. It will come from the part of you that finally understands the silence, the distance, the pause, the changed reaction, the message left unanswered, the argument not entered, the peace no longer explained. These were not random moments. They were signs. Quiet ones. Sacred ones. They were the proof that the old pattern had already lost its command before you found the language to describe it. And now that unfinished scene inside you can finally complete itself. Not with drama. Not with blame. Not with one more explanation sent to someone who never knew how to hear you. The goodbye is not for them. It is for the version of you that kept believing pain was the price of belonging. The one who stayed alert. The one who kept shrinking the truth. The one who confused being needed with being loved. I do not want you to hate that version. I want you to look at it with reverence and tell the truth. You carried me when I did not know another way, but I cannot keep living as you. That is the moment the door closes without violence. Gently, clearly, finally. You do not have to recover the old shape. You do not have to explain why your spirit no longer fits inside the same reactions. You do not have to prove that your change is loving enough to be accepted. The signal has already spoken. The shift has already happened. The only thing left is recognition. You did not lose who you were. You just have not said goodbye yet. And maybe this is that goodbye. If this touched something in you, tell me, because I want to keep building this path with you. Follow me here. And when the final screen appears, do not rush away from it. Let it hold the silence for a second. Let it feel like the space after a door has closed and nothing terrible happened. Let it remind you that not every ending arrives as destruction. Some endings arrive as relief. Some arrive as stillness. Some arrive as the first honest breath you have taken in years. So before you go back into your day, ask yourself this. What part of your life is still waiting for a version of you who is no longer coming back?